Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. For those who don't know me, I'm Daniel Cowan, founder of Big Star Lights. I got into Christmas lights almost 20 years ago, growing an installation company well into the seven figures. I did this as a side hustle while working as a commercial pilot. The company's growth was only possible because I had and still have an amazing team there. I obviously love our weekly meetings and hearing about their successes and learnings along the way. It didn't start out smooth, however, and the first 10 years had some serious personnel headaches, damaged relationships, and costly mistakes. I want to share with you what I do now, why it's working, and give you the tools to perhaps grow faster and less painful than I did. Before we dive too deep, I want to welcome the newest members of the BSL community. This is a platform where myself and other like-minded pro installers get to share knowledge and learn from each other's experiences. It's free and includes access to training, participation, and live streams like this one. There's a premium version too that includes 20% off our website, and it pays for itself in just $2,500 in spend. You'll get access to resources like photos and calculators, and we just added a 20% discount to Sunbelt Rentals. So if you've got them in your neighborhood, take advantage of that. We have bi-weekly community calls too, where we get to sit down and discuss anything from your quotes to marketing to product to operations. There's actually one tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific. So bring your questions because really, guys, it's silly and expensive to figure this business out on your own. Anyway, I'm very excited for what we have in store for the BSL community. If you haven't already done so, register at community.bigstarlights.com. So today is a big topic. We're talking about hiring and training and incentivizing, and it's important to understand why this matters. Because guys, this is the game. We're in the people business, and hiring and retaining great people is your number one growth lever. It's also your most expensive lever, so you want to get this right. I think all of you here are business owners, correct? So I don't want you to think you are in the Christmas light business anymore. Instead, you are in the business of building a business. And that's a mentality shift I want you to start doing today. Your team is your operating system, and it needs to run without crashing. And if you want to scale, it needs to run without you because you're going to need to focus on building the business. And most business owners fail because their team can't scale with them. So we'll discuss how to hire teams that facilitate growth in our unique industry. Common team building challenges that I hear time and time again are, I can't find reliable help. I often hire based on gut, but then later regret it. I have great technicians who leave mid-season. Or I spend all my time babysitting instead of growing. Okay, I don't know if any of you have ever said this before, but definitely this was some things I found myself saying every year at the beginning. By the end of the session today, you'll know how to attract and hire quality installers, the framework for a training system that works, and smart incentive structures that keep your team motivated. And also we'll talk about mistakes to avoid that cost you time and money. Remember, training is your biggest investment, and the costs, many of them hidden, are amplified when you operate in a very short season like we do. So let's get into it. To attract great installers, you need offers so good that people feel stupid saying no. So you're going to sell the outcome. For example, earn great money, learn a trade, outdoors, seasonal freedom. Share numbers. For example, top installers make X dollars per week. You'll achieve Y dollars in bonuses by hitting these metrics. Also, leverage referrals from other great team members. People want to work with people they trust. Explain, for example, how Johnny made $30,000 last year and it was his first year. Now, let's dissect what makes an irresistible offer. You want to craft your offer so well with clarity, credibility, and perceived value that it so well that it overwhelms any of the objections. It's not about manipulation. It's all about aligning what you offer with what they deeply want, and then removing the friction that keeps them from saying yes. In sales, we call this objective handling or objection handling. The value, by definition, is made of 4 variables, and the formula is dream outcome times perceived likelihood of achievement divided by time delay times effort and sacrifice. So think about that. So the bigger the dream and the bigger the perceived likelihood of achievement, the higher the value. Similarly, the smaller the time delay or the smaller the effort and sacrifice, the higher the value becomes. On the extreme, if the time delay, for example, is instant, near zero, the value is really high. If it takes 0 effort, it's also really high. So let's break this down some more. Dream outcome is what they really want. This is the big promise, the emotional reason they'll say yes. For installers, this is often, make a lot of money fast, work with a fun team, be outside, active, and doing visible work. Learn skills they can use or grow from. Make sure your messaging sells the outcome, not the task. In perceived likelihood of achievement, they are asking, will it work for me? People need to believe your promise is realistic. Some ways to achieve this are share success stories from real team members, show the clear process and support they'll get along the way. Remove risk. For example, tell them the training is paid. There will be a tryout shift to see if they like it, and no tools are required. Time delay. This is telling them how soon they'll win. People want fast wins. For example, make $1,000 in your first week, or be fully trained and earning bonus incentives in 3 days, or ability to graduate to crew lead in 4 weeks. The faster they experience success, the more likely they will say yes and stick around. Effort and sacrifice is what they have to give up to achieve value. Make the required input feel manageable or even attractive. For example, no experience needed. We train you fast. Show up on time, work hard, and follow the system. We'll do the rest. Or we provide uniforms, gear, and tools. Minimize pain points, and if there are pain points, flip them into positives. So here's a practical example for recruiting installers. Here's a bad example. Seasonal installer needed, must be comfortable on ladders, wage $20 per hour. Apply now. Here's the irresistible offer. Make $1,500 to $2,000 per week installing Christmas lights with a fun, high-performance crew. No experience? No problem. We train you fast and pay you while you learn. Get paid weekly, work outside, stay fit, create holiday magic. Our top guys earn $20,000 per season, and 80% of them return year after year. So you can see here that the second version hits every point in the value formula and makes the offer feel crazy to ignore. Here are some final tips for creating no-brainer offers. Be bold and also believable. Don't promise what you can't deliver, but don't be timid either. Speak the dream, not the duties. What I mean by that is people buy feelings, not job descriptions. Use social proof and specifics. So numbers, names, stories all increase perceived value. Reduce risk. Offer paid tryouts, guarantees, or short commitment windows. And then stack value. So again, add bonuses, perks, growth paths, or exclusive access. By the way, this same principle of value can be applied to sales of product and services too. The psychology is exactly the same. When the strategies session is published, hopefully tomorrow or the next day, I'll include a link to templates for creating hiring landing pages on your websites. I strongly recommend including a short video too, with you, the owner, talking with crews working in the background. Also, in the template, I'll include a short version that you can put onto your social media. Now, let's discuss the interviewing process. Here's a good quote. "You can train skills, you can't train character," said every successful blue-collar leader ever. Hiring great installers isn't just about finding someone who can climb a ladder. It's about selecting people with the right core traits. The kind that you can't teach in an onboarding video or train into them during a job shadow. These traits are hardwired and non-negotiable. If you hire someone without them, you'll constantly be managing around their weaknesses. My favorite non-trainable traits are a winner mindset, obsessed, a good person, proactive, and optionally, if you need leadership, someone who has that capability as well. So let's discuss each one of these. Winner mindset. The best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. So we want to see a history of winning. Do they have like a wall of medals or achievements in life? We don't want to bet on someone who has bumbled their way through life. Instead, let's get them a few wins under their belt, and then let's hire them. This is often shown on their resume, but you can inquire in the interview as well. So the question is, tell me about a professional failure you've experienced. And there's 3 ways they can answer this question. Bucket 1 is, I've never had a failure in my career. A large number of people cannot think of a time they failed at something. Either they have such a fixed mindset that they never try anything even remotely challenging, or they are unable to admit when they've made a mistake and therefore learn from their experience. These are the same people when asked, what is your greatest weakness? And always respond, I work too hard or I care too much. They may also go on to tell you that if there was a time that they experienced failure, which they hadn't, it was definitely because of someone else's incompetence. So candidates don't win any points with me by failing or by falling into this bucket, since not only are they completely unaware of their development areas, they probably aren't very nice to work with either. Bucket number 2, I failed at something one time and vowed to never try that specific thing again. This answer is only slightly better than the other answers from bucket 1, although this respondent can identify their areas of development. They see those areas as fixed and are unable to or unwilling to change them. Maybe this person had a bad experience with an aerial lift equipment or driving a vehicle while towing a trailer. If I probe to ask them what they learned from the experience, the answer is likely, lifts are scary, or I get really nervous driving trailers around the city. Bucket number 3, here's what happened, here's what I learned from it, and here's what I do differently now. Responses that fall into bucket number 3 clearly show a growth mindset approach to work. The person shares a specific example where they failed, they made a mistake or made a poor decision, and they clearly see their role in the failure. Generally, without prompting, this person will share what they would do differently if they could do it over again. what they've done differently as a result of that experience, or what they've learned from the experience itself. If a person responds like this, I might predict that when faced with setbacks in the future, they might have the ability to look at the situation and their behavior critically and use it as a learning experience. With the high rate of change in our short and intense seasons, this is the person that I want to hire. Obsessed. They have to be obsessed with something. It doesn't have to be related to the job. Obsession proves they have the ability to get it done and get it done right. The question is, what was the last thing you couldn't stop doing even if you tried? Or you can ask, when was the last time you stayed up almost all night to work on something because you chose to, not because you had to? Good person. We all want good people in our business. This is often determined from volunteer experience, which you can inquire about, or references. You want good people because good people attract other good people into your organization. But watch out, bad people attract more bad people. So you need to be really careful there. I like this quote Richard Branson once quoted. It's better to have a hole in your team than an asshole in your team. So the question I like to ask is, how high do you think you'd rank on Santa's naughty or nice list? Maybe top 10% nicest, bottom 10% naughtiest? Why? It's interesting to see people's physical responses to this. They may not have done a self-reflection on this since they were a child. It's also interesting to hear their reasons. Of course, the reference check will be the biggest litmus test here. Proactive. This is the essence of entrepreneurial spirit, a requirement for growth. We can only grow if we have intrinsically motivated people who don't just take opportunity when presented with it, but actually go out of their way to seek opportunity. This is possibly a 2-question trait, depending on how they answer A. What's the coolest thing you have ever done, personally or professionally? Or what's the one thing that you've done that you're most proud of? What motivated you to do it? It's interesting to learn how the cool thing or proud thing came about. Did they seek it out, or did it just present itself? If it presented itself, ask, why didn't you do it sooner? Then follow up with another question. What would you do if our company reached a point of not having enough people to do all the tasks necessary? It's interesting to see how they might solve this problem. They will just ask management will they just ask management to hire more people? Or will they ask why and attempt to actually solve the efficiencies? All right, leadership. You want shepherds, not sheep. Especially if you are interviewing for a lead installer position. The best leaders are determined in how they respond to, amazing, we want to hire you. Who else would you bring? If they respond with, oh, I don't know, that means they are not a leader yet. You want to find people who are already going to bring you the next couple of people into the business. This is a 3-part question. Ask one at a time after they finish answering the first. So the first question is, what does leadership mean to you? And the best answer to this question was described by Disney's CEO, Bob Iger, or ex-CEO. To make yourself replaceable, true leaders help others to step into your shoes, giving them access to your own decisions, making and identifying the skill they need to develop, and sometimes helping people realize why they are not ready for the next step. So the next question is, which of these skills you mentioned do you have? Now be skeptical if they answer all of them. Perfect leaders are rare, and if they are perfect, they are likely overqualified for the position you are hiring for. So the third question is, what leader inspires you the most and why? They should have a role model. If they are not looking up to someone, they do risk losing their compass. For a successfully conducted interview session, it's important that the candidate does 90% of the talking. For example, rather than wasting the first 10 minutes describing the company and services, ask them what they know about the company already. If they can answer well, it's also a demonstration of proactiveness. When we post this webinar, by the way, I'll include a link to a template of the questions we just reviewed here. You ask the same questions in every interview so that you can compare and accurately rank your list of candidates. Scoring your applicants, like sales leads, for example, allows you to prioritize one of your most costly investments in your business, which is training, and gain a higher average rate of return. Also, just a heads up, I'm going to release in about this month should be an interview scoring app specific to Christmas light installers. It'll be available in the BSL community. This will help you form rankings from all your interviews and just keep your thoughts organized. All right, use a trial day instead of a long interview or even a second interview. I can't tell you how often this is overlooked. Traditional hiring interviews can feel like a guessing game, both for you and the candidate. Someone may sound great in the conversation, but will they show up on time, take feedback well, or work hard when it's cold or raining? Hitting the job site for a trial day flips the script. Instead of spending hours asking hypothetical questions, you get to watch them in action and they get to experience the reality of the job. What it reveals is punctuality and attitude. Do they show up early, prepared, and ready to work? It reveals coachability. Do they take direction or get defensive? Also, it reveals team fit. Do they communicate well and contribute to a positive vibe? Also, it reveals their problem-solving ability. How do they handle new tools, situations, or minor setbacks? This method reduces costly bad hires. It speeds up the decision-making process, and it gives the candidate a chance to self-select out if it's not a fit, saving everyone time. And just a hot tip, offer a flat trial day rate, even if they don't get the role. From day one, you need to have clear expectations, metrics, and give them an idea of what great looks like. Show how they can win. If you do X, you get Y. I like to use like a one-page set of SOPs. Below is an example of a 7-step process and links, and I'll use links to checklists and other documents for more details. But this gives each technician a full understanding of the installation process. On the left, I've got a poster highlighting all the attributes of what a great roof line looks like. I have additional ones for canopy wraps, trunk and branch wraps, hanging ornaments, floodlights, and more. So these are big posters placed in the crew rooms, and there's comments on each of the points I want to drive home. So you make sure you highlight the gotchas as well, or common mistakes. I also keep a separate poster of common errors, which are pictures I've collected over the years of what not to do, and I've seen some crazy stuff. Hoping to educate technicians so they don't make the same mistakes. Again, show them how it's done. Don't tell them how it's done. So the 4 Ps, this is a classic framework for making irresistible offers, originally used in marketing, but you can also adapt them to your onboarding process to create clarity, confidence, and buy-in from new team members. So they are promise. What's in it for them? This is the outcome or the value you're offering your new team member. It sets the tone for why they should care about doing the job well. An example, if you commit to showing up, giving your best, and learning fast, we'll make sure you walk away from this season with a full wallet, new skills, and a team you actually enjoy working with. So this promise should feel motivating, not generic. It tells them, do your part and we'll take care of you. So the second P is process. What's the path? This explains how the onboarding works from day one to getting fully up to speed. A clear process removes fear and builds trust. So, for example, you'll start with half a day of hands-on orientation, then you'll shadow a lead installer for your first 2 to 3 days. We give you bite-sized training videos, checklists, and regular feedback so you always know how you're doing. Most people are running their own crew within 4 weeks. Okay, so clarity equals confidence. When people know the steps, they're more likely to stay engaged. All right, the third one is price. What's expected of them? This isn't always about money, it's what they need to invest to succeed, such as effort, time, or attitude. For example, we expect you to show up early, work hard, operate safely, ask questions, and take feedback seriously. If you do that, we'll invest in you. If you're looking to coast or cut corners, this isn't the crew for you. So this sets the bar clearly, stating that there are great rewards, but only for people who pay the price of performance. All right, and then the last P, proof. Show that this works. People want to know, will this really work for me? Social proof, stats, and success stories give confidence. An example is 80% of our installers return for a second season, and a bunch have moved up to team leads or year-round roles. Last year, Jason started with zero experience and earned bonuses every single week. So you can share stats like the average new hire earns X dollars by week 4. Stories like Sarah was terrified of operating aerial equipment. Now she leads a 3-person team who use them every day. You can also include screenshots and short videos or text testimonials. So building a repeatable training system is important for consistency across your organization. You want to think like a franchise. Can the training be run without you? Create a training playlist. So this can include videos, SOPs, checklists. I invite you to refer to the 14 training modules we have on the BSL community. And we've got additional ones coming out this month with focus on the Chroma Glow Pro permanent lighting. We do plan to come up with a subset of modules specifically for your technicians, not just business owners. When you train teams, teach them the numbers too. Let them see how they affect profit. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Try to make new hires productive within 3 days. This is a simple enough business that technicians should be made profitable within that period of time. Keep the quality of the training high so that you can build autonomy, not dependency, right? If dependency will just distract you from building the business. All right. You need to tie compensation to measurable wins. Any that are rewarded at the end of the season are forfeited if the installer leaves early, which further incentivizes them to not leave you hanging. So some ideas I like to incentivize are utilization rates, which are just your billable hours divided by the total hours worked. So if you need, for example, more than 80%, you can pay a certain amount for, say, 80 to 85%, and then another amount from 85 to 90%, and then maybe another amount from 90% above. I also like to incentivize reviews. Public praise is equal to private gain. So, $10, $20 per review, pay it out monthly, can go a long way. Attendance bonuses. At first, I thought this was a bit silly. You're paying people to show up already, but you got to pay extra to have them actually show up. But there was such a short season, it becomes so disruptive when they don't. I found by adding an attendance bonus made a bit of a difference. So, for example, like $250 per month without being late and showing up each day, but 0 exceptions. If they're just a little bit late, they blow their bonus. So, and you actually, with this, you get people showing up early, which is refreshing. Return bonuses. Come back next year and get X dollars, and this saves you on training, right? So it's well worth paying this bonus. Referral bonuses are also great. So for example, Maybe they get $500 for referring new employees who make it through the entire season. So we pay out at the end of the season. And we might as well give it to our employees as opposed to the recruiting companies who are obscenely expensive these days. Upsells. Definitely compensate the upsells. So, you want to build a sales culture and train them on how to win. So this is another whole topic we won't have time for today, but upsells are really important to compensate because your team are boots on the ground and they see the opportunities before you do. So the next thing I want to discuss more in depth is called the Great Game of Business, or GGOB. Treat employees like business owners and incentivize them for the overall health of the company. You need to involve them directly in understanding, influencing, and winning at the game of business. So I highly recommend you read this book. It's called The Great Game of Business by Jack Stack, if you haven't done it already. The core components to the game are open book management. Everyone on your team understands how the business makes money and how their role impacts the bottom line. You can share key financial metrics like revenue, expenses, and profit. You need to teach employees to read and forecast those numbers. And they participate in weekly huddles to track the progress. As an example, show budgeted labor cost for a particular job, the material cost, the revenue, and compare these to actual numbers achieved to determine job profitability. Let them forecast what their team can achieve in a week and have them suggest improvements because they're going to see the opportunities for improvements often before you can. Scorekeeping and forecasting is another core component. Everyone tracks progress like a team chasing a championship. Keep scoreboards for metrics, like, for example, the utilization rate, actual install hours versus budgeted hours. Every job should have this. Create real-time forecasts. Allow team leads to predict what the revenue is going to be and facilitate self-correction. So it's no longer just up to the owner or the ops manager to get things back on the rails, get the employees to self-correct. This creates healthy peer accountability and helps everyone make smarter, more efficient decisions in the field. Mini games, I love these. These are short-term sprints. So make it fun, team-based competitions focused on fixing one specific issue at a time. For example, for improving installation time, say you guys are a little bit slow, track who can install the most C9s in one day or mini lights in one day. I think I had one guy do 125 in one day of mini lights. Or maybe you want to get more 5-star reviews. Well, you would track who has the most of them. You run these mini games for like 1 or 2 weeks and you'll see some noticeable changes. Use visual tracking and then obviously reward the successes with things like gift cards, team dinners, or give them like a VIP parking for the week or 2 weeks. These games keep the team engaged and improving. The last core component is stake in the outcome, so real incentives. The most powerful motivator is when employees win, or when employees win, they get paid. Implement bonus pools based on company performance, and you can tie it to metrics that they can actually control. Keep it transparent so everyone can calculate what their impact is. So for example, if your installers help reduce vehicle or property damage claims by 80% over a season, the saved expense gets shared with the crew in the form of a bonus payout. So now that we're done onboarding, you need to maintain a culture that keeps people. We call it emotional pay. A great example of this is praising team members in public, celebrating wins, even with a pizza or a $50 gift card. There are opportunities to celebrate wins in your weekly huddles where you also talk about the great game of business, leaderboards, and safety, of course. Give them a nickname or a call sign. This is a fun one. Retention is about identity. People will stay if it feels like their team. But you also need a clear growth path so they have visibility to their future. For example, what does it look like from helper to lead to trainer to crew chief. Okay, then you have a very clear visual of how that works. These are some of the pitfalls to avoid. And I'm speaking from experience here, hiring out of panic. This is a recipe for mishiring and disappointing everyone, including current employees. So you might even lose some of those too, which would be a real shame. If you don't have a documented process, you have no chance for scalability. Misaligned incentives, for example, speed without quality. That's a big pitfall. Micromanaging instead of managing outcomes. I've been guilty of this. If you catch yourself micromanaging, remember, it's a game, guys. People don't fail, systems do. Your job is to fix the system. Ignoring team feedback. Make sure to provide a safe channel for them to provide feedback, and make sure all the feedback is responded to in a timely manner. Every single one is really important, that you don't just shrug things off. And then here's one, scaling too early. This one has cost me dearly, and here's why. Don't scale chaos. Trying to grow or expand a business before its systems, processes, and people are under control is a recipe for disaster. If your operations are messy, disorganized, or inconsistent, and you try to grow, you're not actually scaling success here. You're multiplying dysfunction. It's tempting to take on more jobs, say yes to everything. I've been a yes person, most of my life, and it's been a challenge to say no more often. Hire more crews or expand into new areas before you've actually nailed the basics. But if your team isn't constantly trained, or jobs are constantly delayed or reworked, or materials are disorganized, communication is breaking down, then growth only amplifies those problems. So when you scale chaos, you just get more chaos, not more profit. Instead, document everything this season to scale for next season. Use project management tools like checklists and KPI tracking, and build the machine that builds the team. You make sure your business runs without you before you try to grow it bigger than you. Otherwise, you're not building a business anymore. You're building a mess that's too big for you to control. So in summary, we need to create an irresistible offer by communicating a high dream outcome, a high perceived likelihood of achievement. We also want to communicate low time delay and low effort of sacrifice. So these are the 4 variables for value, if you remember. Hire for traits, not just skills. You want a winner mindset. You want obsessiveness, good people, proactive personalities, and leadership capabilities. And don't forget to use a trial day to assess the real world fit. Train with intention. So use repeatable SOPs, not just verbal instruction. Leverage video, demos, checklists, onboard fast but thoroughly. And then incentivize like a pro. Use goal-based bonuses, not blanket raises. So apply open book principles from the Great Game of Business. Reward crew performance, not just hours worked. And then lastly, don't scale chaos. Lock in your systems before expanding. Track performance with metrics like utilization rates, callbacks, and daily revenue per crew, etc. And build leaders, not just helpers. So there's one final thought here to leave you off with is your team is your product. Okay, build it right, and you'll find that your business will start to build itself. All right, so we've got time for some questions here. I'm happy to take any. Oh, here's a question. Yeah. Is it better to hire seasonally or have subcontractors per job? Awesome question. I've been experimenting with this a little bit more. I've actually, I'm still involved with an installation company, and this year is the first year where we're leaning actually quite heavily into the subcontractor side of things, and I think it's going to work because um, when you have when you hire seasonally, now you're also requiring to get vehicles seasonally. You might need, if you have a huge team, you might need HR seasonally. You're going to need iPads and things seasonally, and tools seasonally. So you're going to have this huge influx of things that you don't need the rest of the year that get expensive and add up. But if there's a portion of the year, say like end of October, November, early December, so maybe a 6 to 8 week period where it's so intense, there's so much demand, and the only way to do it is to get more bodies on in a very, very short period of time, the contractor route might be the way to go, because it's a lot of work and be very expensive to get an extra vehicle all kitted out just for like 6 weeks of work. So that the cost of that could outweigh the extra cost of paying more for subcontractors. So you need to do the math there. But if you have a slow start to your season, and maybe it starts in September, maybe those ones would be in-house hires, seasonal hires. But then once you get to the teeth of the season, then bring on the subcontractors. So Boston's follow-up question is, would you be better to outline your subcontracting model you currently use? Oh, I see. Yeah, so the model, like for subcontractors, you just want to pay the subcontractors for the actual billable time. You don't want to pay them for the time to get themselves organized and drive to the job sites and all that sort of stuff. You're only paying them for the billable time. So like if you're, for example, your charge out rate's $100 an hour, pay the subcontractors $50 an hour, and then you pocket the rest, to not pocket it, but just to cover your operating expenses, and pocket some of that. So that's just an example, and it'll help. The contractors will help take the sting out of it. But take it a step further. Like if you do this year after year, incentivize your subcontractors to come back next year so that they're even better at doing their job, and you can pay them a little bit more. And people will start planning their seasons around this. Like if they're maybe it's painters that are slowing down, and you need to get some extra help during the Christmas season, reach out to somebody who owns a painting business and see if you can get some of their crews.
I had a question. You brought up Richard Branson and Bob Iger. Is there any company, it doesn't have to be necessarily in holiday light installation, but is there any company whose hiring you admire?
I'm trying to remember the name of it now. There's a chain of Vietnamese restaurants, and the name escapes me right now. Every single time I've gone to them, and I've gone to a few different ones, and including in China, and they have some here as well. And so it's international chain, and it's exactly the same. Like it's crazy. Like you're in a totally different country, but the service is so good, so positive, and people are clearly passionate, and their turnover rates are extremely low. Clearly they're doing something right, and I think they've just really matched. They found a system for matching people to the job, and then they just dial the training in so well that it's that nobody gets frustrated. Everybody's well incentivized, and clearly they love their job. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of it. I might have to look it up while waiting for any more questions here. All right, so any other questions? Excellent. All right. If there isn't, I think we'll wrap up here. Thanks everyone for taking the time to meet. And I wish you all the best with your hiring. I know we're getting close to hiring season here. Thanks everyone for joining us, and have yourself a great week.